Hello everyone, welcome to the Design Time Machine. We are circa 2007, 2008. We are in Hong Kong and working for a company called WinPlus in Shek Mun in the New Territories near Shatin in this area. The iPhone 1 just came out, smartphones are starting to enter the lifestyle and kind of competing and starting to beat the Blackberries. Around that, a lot of new items, new lifestyle products are coming out. I'm working in that company that does car accessories mostly and starting to do a brand called Yada doing electronic car accessories. So WinPlus had, maybe still have, the office in Shek Mun, a factory in Shenzhen, and another office in Los Angeles. I'm working for one of the sales manager. It's an in-house work. So for the people who are not familiar with in-house design, in Hong Kong, I can't talk for other parts of the world. The way it works is sales manager, designer. No such thing as an art director, creative directions whatsoever. It's extremely reduced basically from customer request or managerial requests to immediately designing the products. And as we'll talk about a little bit later, designing everything else along with the product. So in that context, you can imagine that the creativity process is vastly different from a creative studio under an art director, a marketing manager, a creative director, and so on and so forth. So let's go to 2007. I'm starting to work for them as an industrial designer, and we are going to create accessories, a lot of Bluetooth accessories for the new iPhone, the iPod, the other smartphone. The focus at the time was a lot on hands-free device, as much for car safety as it was for kind of a status lifestyle type of items. So you're going to see a lot of different products that did or didn't make it into production, and you're going to understand a little bit why items that are usually low-end to mid-range look the way they look. And, or at least the one at the time. Today things are kind of different because of the overwhelming presence of mainland Chinese products that are blatant copies of Western products or Japanese products or Korean products. At the time, 2007, Apple is not vastly present in China. That market is in its infancy, and all the accessories are kind of the Wild West. You got to imagine all the different brands of mobile phones at the time and smartphones and other devices like MP3 players and the iPod. Every item came with a different charging plug, a different connecting interface for logging it with on your PC. Some only had an SD card coming out, some had USB ports, and the charging plugs were all over the place. The iPhone and the iPods had their proprietary charging plug that you had to pay a license in order to do accessories for. And so when we are designing those items, we are asked to include everything into it, right? It has to be a phone holder that holds from the slimmest flip phone when it's closed and is very thick but very, very narrow to the largest BlackBerry or iPhone or smartphone at the time. So the articulation, the range of articulations of the phone holders are kind of all over the place. It has to be able to do conference call, hands-free. We need to charge the mobile phone. We need to have an FM transmitter because cars at the time didn't have the Bluetooth connection. You had to go through the radio system and transmit the FM. You had to be able to control the device through the phone holder. You needed to have a detachable Bluetooth earpiece. That Bluetooth earpiece had to be charged on the holder as well. So you can imagine with every single brand of phone using a different connection to charge their phone. And then Apple that had their large flat multi-pin plug for the iPod or the iPhone. That the design brief was just huge and sort of ridiculous. But that's what in-house design is all about. And so of course we tackled the problem head on. And when you do in-house design, you don't have the luxury of going to explain concepts, sketching, taking time, refining shapes. It's show the final product as quickly as possible in order for the sales guy to send it to their potential buyers and go from there. So almost all of the time, everything started directly on the 3D software, usually not on CAD, just basically doing 3D sketches on 3D Studio Max. Some of the other designers in the company were doing sketches on Illustrator. I found that sketching in 3ds Max rendering in Mental Ray, I think Mental Ray at the time, just offered a quicker outcome because I could do videos from that. I could animate the products from there. I could do changes very quickly to the texture, to the style of rendering that I wanted to do. And usually the CAD was just done directly by the factory afterwards, sometime done by myself. So let's take a look at some of the examples of products. You will see items like that clip-on item. So in that world at the time, we had to create what I would call now gadgets, but at the time they were offered as kind of office lifestyle items. So the Bluetooth earpiece, of course, had nowhere to go when you were walking with it in the street. What do you do with it? Well, you clip it on your clothes. So we created items that you could clip on. Of course, when you want to clip on your L-shape Bluetooth earpiece onto your shirt, then the earbud is sticking out or is sticking in, and that's a problem. So we try to find all the different ways we could fold, twist, sometimes bend with TPR and rubbery connection, the earbud into basically what would have been the shape of the cap of a pen that you would then slide into your shirt's front pocket or inside your jacket's pocket. I think the idea was that it was going to look cool to have it clipped onto your shirt, the same way it's a super cool look to have, you know, your pencils in your shirts with the little clip sticking out. And so we've had, well, I have to point at the fact I'm keeping saying I was working by myself with that sales manager. All the other 7 designers in the company were working together or individually for other sales manager, very compartmentalized. I can speak English. Nobody was sharing work to each other or discussing each other's products. Everybody had their group that they were working for and working with. And so with my sales manager, I was the only designer. And so we had to overcome a few things. Like I said, come up with gimmicks. So the clip-on was one of them. Other gimmicks that, like this product that is very, very long, came about the simple fact that microphones were pretty crappy at the time, and the soundproofing of the products were not very good. There was no software to work with the sounds, to isolate the sounds, to do stop the sound of the outside world. And so the idea was, let's bring the microphone as close as possible to the speaking voice to isolate outside. And so some of the items were long. It was basically, throwing pasta at the wall and seeing what was going to stick. Now, when we design for in-house company, in my experience, there is a design language issue. So of course the iPhone is coming out, the iPod is out. That design language is what everybody wants to see, especially your sales manager, especially the company's director. However, as a designer, you're always trying to come up with the simplest, most effective, and most balanced shape that you can find. You want as little superflux lines, elements on the design, right? You want basically to make an iPod, you want to make an iPhone, you want to make some of those perfect, like the Honda robots, the little Honda concept car that they made is just so perfectly proportionate and balanced and with just the right amount of colors and lines. And that is the most difficult thing to do in design, in my opinion. However, when you manage to do it, or you think you've managed to do it, and you have that super simple product, let me try to find the one I'm thinking about. That one. You have it. The shape is simple. You have it planned in your head, how it's manufactured, how the bevel just comes, and the little layer behind is super thin, is going to be very cost effective, but look how pure it is, and the logo is just the right size in the middle and everything. And your sales manager looks at it and all he can think about is, I'm paying for your time. That looks like you spent no time designing this. Add stuff. Add to it. That happened approximately 100% of the time. So a lot of the concepts that you see in that presentations are concepts that didn't go through as you see them. I liked them this way, but the final product had lines, embossed textures, icons, shapes, additional materials, finishes that were completely useless and that rendered the look really, really, really low end and cheap. As if you're trying to make up a nice shape by adding instead of subtracting. And I believe this at the time, in that period, 2000, basically early 2010, 25 to 2010, those products, all the superflux, everything that was added was only added in those in-house design projects because they were asked to, because there was not enough. And I believe this is really a symptom of that structure of companies. So keep that in mind. If you're going to work in-house without an art director, you're the art director. You're in charge of designing the product and then. So the and then is, you design the product, well, we need a logo for the product. We need to think about a packaging. What about a slogan? Hey, how is that packaging going to fit the palette? Oh, we have a fair coming soon for the clients. We need to make the booth for that. And by the way, when you make the booth, we need to propose planograms because we need to make sure that they get their rental in the supermarket or wherever they're going to sell their stuff. So your expertise exponentially explodes and you have to handle everything, which in my opinion is an unbelievable asset, because that means your request to do a product come immediately in your head with a workflow of everything that's going to trickle down from whatever is the original request, right? The blister, the material, the packaging, the multiple options that are going to come up. Like for example, for that clip-on product that we had, oh, that's the size of packaging that fits best the most amount of product per pallet. Well, we don't want to spend too much money in die cuts. All right, in that case, we're going to sleeve the product. This way the sleeve can be printed in any way you want, no matter the country, no matter the language. Sleeves are cheap. Sleeves don't require a die cut. It's just a fold and a glue. And inside that, we're going to come up with 1, 2, 3 cartons, standard die cut that you're going to get, and you're going to be able to package it however you like. So when you work directly in-house, you have to be aware that you're not answering to an art director that is going to look for signs of design quality, right? They're not going to look for, wow, that rounded edge is the perfect proportion for that rectangle. That's unbelievable. The thickness that you created is a third of the width. I can't believe you come up with that. That's a perfect line. Let's talk about the size of that logo. Let's work on the font. What they're going to look is, does this design looks like you've spent all the time I pay for and OT in order for you to come up with it? And that becomes a challenge in design language, because you want to simplify everything. I believe, no matter what you're working on, you don't want anything that doesn't have to be there. Yet, you have to make it look overly complicated just so it's time well paid. That can be an issue if you're doing freelance as well, right? You don't want to come up with your idea. What if you work very, very, very quickly? I come up with an idea usually while I'm discussing the brief. I already have an image in my head. I need to get this out on the paper, on the CAD, on the software as quickly as possible so it stays fresh. I have my proposal extremely fast. Oh well, are you paying for my time? Then that was a very short amount of time. You should be cheap. You and I know that is not the way the quality and the prices are being handled. So keep that in mind. You're working for an in-house company. You're going to have to allocate your creative mind to other things than that simple, pure shape. You're going to struggle to sell that to your sales manager. He's going to have a hard time understanding that less is more. Okay? Take, for example, that very simple, very nothing special clip-on earpiece that at the end of the day was the one. Now, why does that earpiece works? It has the name clip-on. It has the concept. Does it clip on your clothes? No. But the brand stack. The 90% of the earpiece is that black part that you see, the earplug, the back plates that contains the battery and everything. The front plates is customizable. It can change the value of the product. You can be creative on that front plate. You can show a full mood board of pattern. Hey, what if we did hydro dipping? What if we did print? What if we did spray on textures? What if we did a stainless steel one? What if we chromed one? What if we had the matte design? What if we had the children version? What if we had branding? Could we get licensing? And so that certainly becomes something that your sales manager can get behind. He can understand your concept. And so that clip-on Bluetooth was very simple. It is not sexy, but it is sexy for the person that you're presenting it with. So I like this time period because iPhone was fresh. iPod was still here. The one with the aluminum sleeve in multicolor. The iPod Mini as well. The one that was long. And it was still in between the kind of the Nokia design, the very full of button BlackBerry design, the folding phone. Everybody was trying to have. My folding phone has a screen on top. My folding phone has two screens when you open it. My folding phone has an antenna. Mine doesn't have. My phone is smaller than your phone. Oh yeah, but my touchscreen can do things that your tiny phone can do. And so everything was possible at the time. The manufacturing was done in a much smaller scale. There was a lot less brands. There was no Chinese brands per se at the time. And we were not locked into the black rectangle that we all have now. That is, in my mind, it's kind of an idiotic design conversation to talk about smartphones today. That at the time is a good time capsule of what the OEM and the ODM in-house design looked like in Hong Kong. I can't talk about what it was like. The LA office was completely different. They were working on the Yada brand. They were, discussing the logo, the slogan. We created the packaging, and then they would have their all internal conversations about the meaning of it, when we would just constantly producing and producing and producing. And so you're a young designer. That's almost 20 years ago. So I was a very young designer at the time, very junior. That was my fourth year as a designer, fourth year. And so remember that all those limitations and those frustrations that you get from what I try to explain here, the please more is more, work around it, work with it, do your design like I did. Those concepts that you see, they might go nowhere. They're going to go in your portfolio. They're going to go in your bank of shapes in your head, your bank of volumes, your bank of color codes, your bank of code shapes, what you like to have. I like to have that circle in a square. I like to have that U-shaped bevel. I like to have those 45 degrees angles, whatever it is that you're creating as your own design language. Even if it's around something as omnipresent and requested as something like the iPhone at the time, there's going to be one omnipresent design that everybody wants to see, and that when you do it, you're going to probably face a wall by a person saying like, is that the same, or are you lazy? So those are fuel to your creativity. And I believe, although these designs are now close to 20 years old, to these days I can still look at them and I'm like, yep, I could make that one today. I know what I would change. I know what software I would use. I know what rendering technique I would use. I know what presentation I would build. I would probably do a lot of things differently, but that is the design language that is now stuck with me. And the way I use that design language in selling the quality of that design to my customers is now thanks to those from that frustration at the time, from those limitations at the time that I often didn't got. I didn't understood them. However, that is building blocks. And so I just want to point out, young designers, you're going to have your limitations in today's age, especially if you're working in-house, if you're the only one, if you're in a very small team, if you don't have an art director, you have to be your own creative director. You're working for the salesperson, you're working for the logistic person, you're working for the direction, for the accountant. You are not working for art-based employers or managers. And so fear not. This is actually, I believe, a wonderful way to build your toolbox. So I will probably do another one when I describe everything that trickles down from being the only person in charge of everything. Like probably today where companies want to spend less and less money on employees, it is going to come big time where you are asked to do everything. So here you go. That's a little time capsule of those Bluetooth earplugs and phone holders from 2007, 2008. That is my ramble. I'm going to just end on this design that, like I wrote, constantly remind me that I am a Star Wars fan. And by a Star Wars fan, I mean episode 1 through 6. And yes, I like 1, 2, 3. Do not judge me. Every now and then, I make a design like that. It's black and white. It's angular. It's irregular. And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's a cockpit. That's a walkway. That's a Darth Vader helmet. And I find it so cool, and then I open it 6 months later and I find it hideous, and then I open it again 5 years later and I'm like, yeah, I think that's cool because it's retro or whatever. Those designs that nobody will ever pick up, you like them for 1 minute, you keep them in your bank. Display them, show them. The oddballs, all right? I'll do an episode on the oddballs. I'll show you all the worst of the worst things that I have done in design. All right, so this is my little time capsule of first generation iPhone Bluetooth accessories, car accessories. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you have maybe got a little bit of inspiration or information or guidance for what you're doing today or problems that you might have. Any questions? Write them down in the comments. Any comments? Write them down in the comments. And I'm going to try to come up with more of those, sharing my 21 years of industrial and graphic design with you guys, and trying to just put it out there. If it helps anyone, just one person, I'll be happy about that. All right, so on that note, cheerio.